Okay, it is week 6. Welcome to critical skills in written and oral communication, crime scenes to conviction, J122, week 6. And we're moving right along. You had your first um, part of your um, project, your field reports, and for the next week or so, you'll have some exposure to getting ready for your draft that will be due. And so I'm going to mention that a little bit, but I'm going to first go over what the requirements are for week 6, which are not very many. So again, I want to remind you that we have 2 more lectures to go, week 8 and week 10. And we didn't have one in week 2. You know why? So we had week 4 a couple of weeks ago, and then I will be providing you an archive of this lecture today. So let's see what we have here. So Module 6, Police Interrogation. To prepare for this, you read Chapter 9 of Interpersonal Communication, Reporting, and Writing, Parts 4, Sections C and D. Also, read the section on your Miranda rights, and then I'm going to put this video, Burglary at the Warehouse, on, and you'll be able to go through that exercise. And then your written assignments for this week, discussion post, where were you last night? Your initial post was due Tuesday, and your reply post is due Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then your CJ project, you should make revisions to your field notes. It's not something that you're turning in, but and then do your writing skills quiz as well. Okay, so let's finish strong as we continue to move forward. Let's take a look at our course calendar. Here we go. Okay, so I gave you your reading assignment, your discussion post, and then a reminder that you have revisions to your field notes and my feedback. And so make sure you go through that and take a look at that. Okay, and then your CJ writing practice is not something that's graded, but it will help you. So the only real assignment that you have for the week, and you'll see that in a few minutes, is the written assignment, is the discussion post. Now, for week 7, I'm reminding you, continue working on this project. So now I'm going to talk about this. Let's go through what we have for week 6 right now in terms of assignments. And this is it. And then your writing skills quiz is not timed, but you want to make sure that you get that done and completed. Okay, so I said that it wasn't graded, but it is graded, but you want to submit your answers. So let me go back to the course calendar to clarify that. Okay. Let's see, I got to take a look at something here so I can make sure I get this lined up right so you don't get confused. Okay, yeah, I see what happened, and I'm getting ready to fix it right now on the calendar. Here we go. The assignment that was in there last week for writing skills quiz actually belongs right here. And then the CJ writing practice belongs right here. That's what happened. So, okay, because in week 5, course content, yeah. So I'm right. I'm right. Okay, I got it fixed now. Okay. So now let's go back to week 6, where we are now. So you only have two assignments. You have the writing skills quiz, and then you have your discussion post. That's it. That's it for this week. And the writing skills quiz is due Sunday. Now let's take a look at the module here. Lesson content. So we're going to deal with interrogations tonight, your Miranda rights, and that. But before I go to that, I want to take you to week number 7 and remind you of what's happening in week number 7, since we won't have a lecture. You'll only have your discussion. That's all you'll have is your discussion. Okay? But if you go back, that's next week now. You go to the lesson content, you'll have the writing practice that I said that's done. I won't be going over that with you. But the thing that you want to most be aware of is that at the bottom, to begin work on your police report, make sure that you go down here and look at this template, because this is what's going to be required for your what you turn in week 8 and week 10. And here it is. This is the template. Your assignments, your should be on that. This is what it looks like. So your front sheet and your cover sheet, and you're going to make sure that you go over it. Now I'm going to discuss in detail in week 8 what the assignment is in detail, but this is the template that you're going to be using to prepare yourself for week 8 when you do your draft. You got to use this template. Very important. That's why I take the time to show it. Okay, and like I said again, the way that you access it is right here at the bottom under the Lessons tab. It won't be under Assignments. It'd be under Lessons tab, Lesson Content at the very bottom. So you want to make sure that you do that. Very, very, very important. And then I sent you an article some time ago that told you about how to prepare a police report, and you should be able to access that because you're going to be dealing with that in week 8, and then you're going to be dealing with that in week 10. All right? Very important. Very, very, very important that you get that. Some students don't, and they lose a lot of points right off the bat because they miss using that template. You have to use that template. All right? So now with that, I'm going to go right into our lesson content, and we're going to deal with the issue of police interrogation. Okay, so you are already aware of the fact that there are Miranda rights in place. The Miranda rights involve saying you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to an attorney and have an attorney present before and during questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed free of charge to represent you before and during the question if you desire. These warnings, based on the famous case of Miranda versus Arizona, 1966 landmark case, which is very important and prevalent today, to be used anytime a in custody. And the question that often is posed is, how do you know when a person is in custody? The answer is very, very simple. It can be asked by them, can I go? And if the answer is no, in that case, they are in custody. So if they are in custody, then law enforcement officials should understand that before they begin to question that individual, which is different from an interview, but the interrogation involves questioning someone who's in custody, as I said, then the Miranda rights must be given. Now, be aware of the fact that there are people who do it from the top of their head. Most departments now have pre-printed cards that they have these Miranda warnings on, that it is a policy of the department. The Miranda warnings are administered by utilizing those cards. And the reason for that is very simple, is that you want to make sure that you cover everyone in the right order and that you have covered every base. And so oftentimes in court, individuals who are police officers, law enforcement officers, are questioned, did you administer the rights? And then, could you tell me what those rights are? Well, generally, what the individual is trained to do is not to start rattling off the rights, but to say, we utilized a pre-printed card, and I read the rights. May I use my card? And then that card is used. Now, the reason is because you'll read directly from it. You won't make any mistakes. And because if you make a mistake on the stand, the defense attorney is going to pounce all on you, even if it's an innocent mistake. Because remember, the idea of the defense attorney, which I was for many years, is to discredit you or to make it seem as if you're not professional or you're not prepared or you're incorrect, those kinds of things, or to rattle or shake you. And it can easily be done. I did it many times. And I teach police officers and law enforcement officers to operate on that basis. Now, the Miranda warnings, I had some really good training about it while I was even in law school. I was fortunate enough to have a professor by the name of Fred Enbow. They called him Freddie the Cop. Professor Enbow was a author, and he published case books that we were using to actually study. He's written several other books. Well, he got together with a guy by the name of John Reed, R-E-I-D, and they wrote a book called Interrogations and Confessions. And the techniques that were in that book were the techniques that were used by the law enforcement officials during the Miranda versus Arizona case. Well, if you ever read the full case, you will discover that they saw those techniques as violating the constitutional rights, the Fourth Amendment rights of individuals, and the Fifth Amendment rights of individuals, primarily the Fifth Amendment rights, and that the individuals were either tricked or coerced into providing information. Thus, the techniques were criticized. My professor took personal offense to it back in 1975 when I had him in my first semester in criminal law. Professor Enbow said he felt personally maligned. And as a result, every time a case came up before the United States Supreme Court, he submitted an amicus brief, or amici brief, on behalf of it's an organization called National Association of Prosecutors or something like that. Anyway, pointing out why this decision, Miranda versus Arizona, should be overturned. And that was his goal in life. And he died some years after I graduated, and it, of course, is still law. But just a little inside information that I had, and gave me some real insight into it. You can find the full decision if you go to findlaw.com, and then the complete case is there. Also, you can go to Justia, JUSTIA.com, and you can find it also. So take time to look at it. It's a very, very, very important thing. It's actually a tool that is required to be utilized in the right fashion, and refresh them on the Miranda rights. Very, 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 very important. Very important. And people find themselves not understanding the importance of these rights. And like I said again, if it's not done properly, a defense attorney can file a motion to suppress any statements that are obtained, and that if the person wasn't properly Mirandized, those statements could be eliminated, which makes the difference in a conviction oftentimes and a person being set free. So it's not to be taken lightly. And the warning in this little section here, it says officers who interrogate suspects must ensure that the suspect fully understands the rights. So therefore, that means that if the person, it turns out, doesn't speak the language that you're reading it in, then that person hasn't been properly Mirandized. So it must be clear, not that they heard the rights, but that they also understand their rights. That's the way it operates. So, and at any time during interrogation, the suspect may invoke their rights or refuse to answer any further statements. From that point, you cannot and will not go back to them until the process goes to the point, particularly generally where a lawyer is present. So that's pretty much it for dealing with interrogation. Again, the difference in interrogation is whether a person is in custody. If a person is in custody, it is considered as interrogation. Okay, if they're not free to go, even if you haven't given those words, you're under arrest, it's still, they're in custody. Okay, so remember that. So now let's conclude by going through this. I'm going to try to go through this. It's a rather large file, so it takes a little time for it to open. So hang in there while it opens up. It takes a few minutes to open up. It's a very good exercise, and I recommend that you do go through it. So be patient there while it opens up, because it will pop open in a minute. Okay, it's going on the last go round. Okay, it's getting closer. Okay. Just remember, when you're downloading it yourself, uh, it's going to do what it's doing now. It takes a little while, and there's a warning that it tells you that it takes a little while because it's a rather large file, but it is well worth going through. There we go. Okay. So it says your name is Chris Patrick, and you share an apartment with this person, Keith Remy. And it's early Saturday morning, and the police call you. Normally, Keith would have answered the phone, but the door to his bedroom is open, and he doesn't seem to be home. So you answer the phone. Okay? So here we go. So it says, hello, this is Officer Randall with the Bloomingdale Police Department. Is this Chris Patrick? So the answer that you're given is either yes or why do you want to know? Let's just say yes for this purpose.
Yes. Your roommate, Keith Rennie, was arrested last night for burglarizing the building. We would like for you to come down to the police station because there are some things we want to talk to you about.
So now the choice, so you have your thoughts and then the choice. He'll either say, okay, I'll be down in an hour, or maybe I should have a lawyer with me. I'll be there in an hour. That's what he says. So then let's just say he says, okay, because he doesn't feel like you're really trying to
okay, I can be there in an hour. Thank you for coming in, Chris. As I said on the phone, your roommate, Keith, was arrested last night for burglary. Were you with Keith last night? We went bowling after dinner, and then we walked back to our apartment. Were you drinking last night?
So the question asked, was he drinking last night? So then he could say either not really, just a beer or two while bowling, or yeah, probably 5 or 6 beers each.
Yeah, probably 5 or 6 beers each. Keith told us you had a lot to drink last night. What did you and Keith do after you got back home? We talked for a while and watched TV. Later I went to bed. What did you talk about? We talked about that warehouse next door to our apartment building. We were curious about what was in there since we've never seen anyone going in or out. Did you talk about how a person might get into the warehouse? Keith mentioned an air duct on the side of the building. Do you know where Keith was arrested?
He would probably, if he says probably at the warehouse, or I don't know. If he said I don't know, he's getting evasive. So let's say he's cooperating.
Probably that warehouse next door to our building. He was arrested at the warehouse on Portland Avenue next to where you live. Were you with him? No, I went to bed about 10:30. Is there anyone that can verify that? Yes, Keith was home when I went to bed. Anyone else?
So the answer is probably no.
No.
Because he said he was with you.
You're not under arrest, Chris. Just a couple more questions and then we will be done. Do you or Keith go to school? Keith doesn't, but I go to Dale Community College. We found a sweatshirt on the floor of the warehouse that says Dale Community College. Do you have a sweatshirt like that?
He already knows he went to the college. So he shouldn't say, I don't know what color was sweatshirt. He said yes, because it was a gray one.
Yes, a gray one. So you have no alibi for the time. You confess that you discussed breaking into the warehouse. Your clothing was found inside the warehouse, but you claim you were at home sleeping. Doesn't that sound suspicious to you?
Now, if you're in that position, it is probably best to use choice number 1. but because if you start to do this second one, you're going to get in deeper trouble. Let's go say he says nothing, which would probably be the best.
Here's the situation. This morning, Keith told us that you were there with him in the warehouse last night, but then you left before the police officers arrived.
Keith is lying or this cop is lying. So he'll say, either I talked with Keith about the warehouse, but I didn't go in with him. Since he's already admitted that he talked with Keith about the warehouse, it would probably be best in this situation to do this.
I talked with Keith about the warehouse, but I didn't go in with him.
Whether or not you were actually in the warehouse, you were part of the plan. That means you confessed to conspiracy to commit a felony. I'm willing to believe that you weren't in the warehouse. So if you agree to sign a confession that you helped plan the break-in, I'll make sure you just get probation and not a single night in jail. That's the best I can offer you. Otherwise, we charge you with burglary based on your lies and the evidence.
So he's thinking, how'd this happen? If I go to jail, I'll lose my job and my car. So he says, oh, I'll confess to planning, but never went near the warehouse. So now he would probably be in the best to say he didn't do anything wrong because he already said that.
Forget it. I didn't do anything wrong.
So now look at what happens. Under pressure, good. Okay, now it's time to try the other side. You will be the investigator interviewing Chris now. Maybe Chris is guilty or not. It's your job to get Chris to cooperate and tell the truth. Once Chris contacts a lawyer, the interview is over. You know why, because of what we talked about earlier. Along the way, you will choose which questions to ask. But one word of advice. This is not televised to avoid drama. I mean, that's what a lot of people do. They think it's something on some TV show, but it doesn't work like that. So let's go to the second half where we're going now to interviewing Chris. Okay, so thanks for coming in. So Chris, do you know why I asked you to come down here? Thanks for coming in today. Your roommate Keith was arrested last night, and I'd like to ask you some questions. How long have you known him? So the choice of questions will depend on how you get him to cooperate. So you really want to not do this, but you want to operate very gradually.
Thanks for coming here today. So Chris, do you know why I asked you to come down here?
I guess because Keith got arrested.
Start easy. Making someone guess and answers is counterproductive, and it gives the suspect control over the conversation. See what I'm talking about? Okay, I want to figure out what Keith was doing last night. Were you with him at all yesterday? We'd like to figure out what Keith was doing last night. Were you with him at all yesterday? So, you know, we would like to figure out, or I want to figure out what Keith was doing. So is it better to make it himself or we? We would like to figure out what Keith was doing last night. So here we go.
We would like to figure out what Keith was doing last night. Were you with him at all yesterday?
Well, we work at the same place, and after work, we got dinner at Marion's barbecue and then went bowling.
So saying out instead of reminds the suspect that you represent the police, and this is more intimidating than having a more personal conversation. That's why the we approach. So then, while you're bowling, you guys probably had a few beers, too many. Tell me anything that you guys have anything to eat or drink. So he already knows the answer to this question. So he's going to see how he bases it.
So while you're bowling, you guys probably had a few beers. Probably had a few too many beers.
We had a couple of beers.
Asking leading questions may invite the person to agree to an erroneous statement. A smart suspect will realize they're being manipulated. That's why that last question was kind of risky. Okay, now, Chris, you want to help us figure out the truth here, right? Well, the reason I ask about bowling is to figure out where Keith was before he was arrested.
Chris, you want to help us figure out the truth here, right?
So the answer is over. The interview is over because of that question. Because until a person gets a lawyer, because that's pretty much what the person is going to end up doing. So then you could try it again and go over it, depending on. So the whole objective is to get questions that gets the person to cooperate. That's the purpose of this exercise. I showed you both different ways. I gave you some bad answers, some good answers, and mixing. You could see the results and the how it works. So it's a pretty good exercise. The objective is to get all the way to the end. I know the way to get to the end as a professional, and I know which ones to check because I've done this many times. Good teaching, but it's a good little exercise. You get a chance to go over and do it. So that's it. That's it. So like I said, it's a big file. Be patient and hang in there, and you'll be able to you'll have a little fun with that, and you'll learn some things there as well. So with that, I'm going to say good night. Remember what I said about that template. I cannot tell you, I've had students at least once, two every quarter to not follow that particular point, particularly since we don't do a lecture in week 7, and they totally miss it. But it is very, 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 very important that that template is used as you prepare your cover sheet and then your draft for week 8. So I'm going to say good night.